What's up, guys, and welcome to the Mafia Championship podcast, the very first edition. Boy, am I hyped. I am more hyped than our Apocalypse, if any of you guys know her. I am hyped with the 10 exclamation marks. The Olympics is cancelled, but one thing that isn't cancelled is the Mafia Championship. If anything, it's doing better than ever because a lot of people are home due to the coronavirus. So, as you can see, I am not alone in this podcast. I have 4 people with me, and not just any 4 people. I have 4 previous champions. I have the season 1 winner, the inaugural winner, DWetzel from 2+2. I have Dels, the winner of, let me recall, season 4. Yes, that's right. It's the 3 most recent winners besides the Wetzel. So it's season 4 champion Dels, season 5 champion GeneralHankerchief, and the most recent champion Beck. And guys, you can turn on your microphones, and let's get this baby started. So let's say hi to these guys one at a time.
Alrighty.
There's one person that I think a lot of people are very excited to hear from, DWetzel, the season 1 winner in the house.
Hello, how you doing?
How are you doing? I was pleasantly surprised when you said you'd be on board for this
I figured,
podcast.
why not? You know what the heck, could be fun. Yeah, so glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you. And let's just do a quick catch up with regards to Werewolf, aka Mafia. I know you call it Werewolf, and I'm also raised to call it Werewolf. How long it's been since you played? And
oh gosh, probably 2.5 years or so since I played a game. Last year before that, I probably did the whole, I don't really want to play, but I'll sub in if you really need me for the extra play. Yeah, okay, that means you're playing. So, but yeah, and it just got, work obligations and family obligations just got to the point where I didn't have the time to really devote to games that I like to have when I want to play. So just kind of faded out of it. So still like playing, but hard to make the time to do it. So
fair enough. I think a lot of people get to that stage. I've called myself retired for I think 6 years, but I have played some games in those years, so I'm not really retired, semi-retired. That's what I think it's called. And like Jones says in the chat, and we have a lot of activity in the chat. I don't know if you guys are following along on the side. There's a reunion coming soon, and that is true. There will be a championship reunion. So that's a big tease here. There will be a reunion.
You've been teasing a championship reunion for 3 years now, thingy.
That's true, but maybe
But now enough people have left that you can do that.
Teasing it longer than Panther Seinfeld mash.
Well, you got to stretch it out so it's more special when it happens.
Slow rolling the reunion too. I see how it is.
Yeah. We needed more winners, of course. We needed the UN and Beck to also win. And let's move on to the season 4 champion.
Hello.
From Game Facts. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, Game Facts. That's exactly how it's pronounced.
And Dels, tell us a little bit about your Mafia situation right now.
I still play Mafia, but I don't like to play too often. Like a lot of people are just kind of playing nonstop, whereas I usually play 1 or 2, maybe 3 games a year, because if I play a game, I get so into it that by the end of it, I'm completely exhausted and I can't play again for a few months. But I do have the same thing. I do have a standing offer on my home board to replace into any game if they absolutely need it and there is no one else.
Awesome. Let's move on to GeneralHankerchief. GH. Nice background you got there, GH.
Yes. I apologize for that. I see on the Twitch screen, my face is kind of shrouded in darkness. It does look better on the Zoom call itself. I apologize for this. There's a real window there. Too much natural light coming in just screws with everything. I apologize to Twitch chat for that.
To a lot of people, you're shrouded in darkness anyway. Darkness.
You know what? And that's the image I like to convey anyway, so that this sort of works.
Yeah. You remain a mystery. And do you still play GH?
Yes. My winning season was 2018. I took most of 2019 off, quote unquote retired, due to burnout and just I don't want to do this crap anymore. But combination of quarantine and the burnout naturally ending, I'm kind of back. I'm playing a lot of matches lately, though I'll still probably do a couple of, normal sized games over the course of the year as well.
Yeah, we'll get back into this later, but a lot of people on MU probably know GH as being the spectator chat warrior. Like, he posts in there more than anyone else, and like, judging from how much you're reading those games, I'm not sure why you don't play games, because you seem to be playing all the qualifiers anyway.
Yeah, right. Let's not go there.
But of course, there's no pressure when you're just a spectator warrior. Right. Moving on to the most recent champion, Beck. And Beck, I can hello Beck. Me and Beck actually had this idea for a podcast 2 seasons ago. So I'm glad to see it finally come to fruition. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It was awesome to get the invite a couple weeks ago. And it's really cool to be with all these other really talented players. So last season I won, which was 2019. I've been playing games on and off since then, like GH matches, small game stuff. I think I just signed up for another one. Could be hosting anniversary. We got an all-star cast hosting anniversary this year. So still involved, still enjoying it. Yeah.
How many players are you imagining for the anniversary?
Oh goodness. I don't want to be put on record here. I mean, it would be nice to shoot over 100 like we normally do. That's a pretty good goal. I don't know if it'll be. I think the first one we did in 17 was. I think we hit like 180. Maybe we went north.
Not quite 180. I think you were like 170s. Don't ask me how I remember this.
Okay. So I mean, the more people we get, the better. And champs always brings in more. But yeah, all in all, still active, still enjoy it. Love Mafia Universe a lot. So.
Someone in chat is saying 174 or something.
That sounds right.
And I imagine there's maybe some people out there watching who aren't that familiar with Mafia Universe. So let me just contextualize this a bit. Each year we run a big anniversary game, and we have a lot of players in it. And I don't know, do any of you guys know what the record is?
I believe it was set in the first anniversary. So whatever Twitch chat is saying for that.
Okay. So like almost 200, whatever. Like that's the record for how many players we've had in game. But anyways, this is not about the anniversary. This is about the Mafia Championship. Let me just throw some numbers at you guys out there. This season, we have 165 communities participating. It is down from 187 last year, but that is because we want to consolidate. It's not because we couldn't fill it. We just wanted to have more quality rather than quantity. There are some more inactive communities out there. Throughout the seasons 1 through 7, we've had 50 or more than 50 different nationalities represented. From all continents. Not sure we've had Antarctica, but we've had pretty much everything. We've had almost 1,000 representatives. And counting the new communities participating this season, we have 360 different communities that have played in the Mafia Championship throughout the years. That's a lot of communities. Unfortunately, some of them have passed away, so to say. But I have also seen some communities be revitalized by the current corona situation, which is
hooray for plagues.
Yeah, exactly. And let's talk a bit about this season. Let's talk about where should we start? Let's talk about the setup. It's called I'm not sure how to pronounce it actually. It's Jack of all trades. Jote squared. Jack of all trades square. So for those of you who don't know, the setup, or actually let me contextualize this a bit more. Each season in Mafia Championship, we run a different setup. We do this to avoid certain communities having an advantage because it plays to their meta, their usual style of play. We want to mix it up so it's not unfair in that way. So we've had anything from what's called mountainous, that means rolless games, no rolls at all, no special rolls at least, to roll madness-y type games. This is an open setup this year for 15 players, 3 Mafia, and then 2 special town power roles that are both Jack of all trades, and they're both the same role. And to explain, finally, the Jack of all trades role, it means that you alternate between different abilities that you have. And for this season, I believe it's Tracker, it's Motion Detector, and it's a doctor. So for those of you who don't know those terms, tracker means you can see who someone visited at night, if they visited anyone. You can motion detect, and that is to check whether there was any activity surrounding the person, whether someone visited them or they visited someone else. And then finally, doctor or angel, as some communities call it, is a protective role. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on this setup. And I don't know, let's start with maybe the most recent champion, Beck.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, last season there were PRs, power roles involved on my setup too, and so I was excited. I know in between seasons we'll kind of debate, what we're looking for. So seeing this season that we're still going to get some power roles involved, and I've not actually seen a jack of all trade like this, used super commonly. Elements of it, right, but not all together necessarily. So I was really excited to see that. And I think, we're going to see it really play out with a lot of potential for some kind of trick plays, some fake claims here and there. It's going to provide a lot of opportunity for players to get really creative, which is always really exciting. So, yeah.
And GH, one of the special things about this setup, and it's very much on purpose, is that there are two identical power roles. Do we have what are your thoughts on how it plays into the dynamics of the game?
I think it's extremely interesting. I know a lot of people in their setups don't really like overlapping power roles, especially in smaller setups like this. But I feel like in this instance, the two Jotes or jacks of all trades actually is a little bit weaker, or at least fairer to the Mafia team than just a single one. Because if you got a track or you got a motion detect, if it's just you as the single Jote, you have a lot more clarity with those results than if there's two out there. So it gives a little bit of an added extra dimension to the things. You're like, oh crap. So do I want to push this person super hard because I know something happened? Do I risk doing that even though they might be my Jote partner? There's a lot of I at risk of repeating myself, an extra dimension, and something that I think is primed for a lot of potentially interesting, fun situations to spectate as people go all in on an interpretation of what they saw that might not necessarily be correct. And that's always fun to spectate.
So what does this mean? Like, if you're one of the jack of all trades, do you want to see the other jack of all trades lynched?
You don't ever want to see a talent power roll lynched, and you don't ever want to see a talent roll lynched, period. You have to try to just work around it a little bit more. Yeah. And doing that, if you roll that, is something that you'll probably be judged on by both your peers and the jury.
Yeah. Because one of the, I don't think any Jote would want that, but one of the interesting dimensions is that the role becomes much more powerful when the other role dies. Dels, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this setup, and let's maybe also touch on expectations and guesses, and I'll ask all of you for those, because it's no secret that the Mafia Championship, and we'll touch more generally on this as well, has seemed to be pretty Mafia favored, in the sense that throughout all seasons, the Mafia have won more games than the Town has. And we've tried many different setups, and it always seems to fail, so to say, in some regard. Dels, what are your expectations of this setup? Is it more Town favored than previous setups, or what do you think will happen?
I'm not sure. Well, one of the things about a setup like this, an open setup, that I don't think often gets touched on is that the people with roles are sort of like innocent children, because since the roles are known, the Mafia don't really have room to counterclaim. They do have room to counterclaim on the final day, lynch or lose, and they often do and get believed from what I've seen. But that is something that helps the town a lot, because maybe some townie who isn't playing super well could have gotten lynched. They happen to roll jack of all trades, they claim it, the Mafia can't counter, and suddenly that lynch is off the table. So I think that's one thing that helps the town. And personally, I also like the fact that the jacks have doctor saves, because it means that the Mafia can't just kill the strongest player on night one. There's a little bit more of a risk involved. So that's something I like just for championship format as a whole, but it could potentially help towns win more if the Mafia are scared to just kill the strongest player.
And I'll expand on that and then bring it over to you, DWetzel, because DWetzel played in season 1, where the setup was there were about 25 players, and it was semi-close, which means like there were 30 or so possible roles that could be in the game, including very powerful roles such as the Cop or the Seer, as some of you might know it. Basically, a role that can check someone's alignment each night. And also Vigilante, which just straight out takes a player out of the game. And that is something I can reveal that we've tried to avoid in later seasons. We've learned from before. It's been difficult not to make setups without these very classic roles. Like when you play a regular game outside of championships, you often see those roles and you want those roles because it has brings certain momentum to the game. But we sort of want to avoid that in the championship. So DWetzel, what are your thoughts on like the setup your season versus this season? Do you think this allows for more?
My season was definitely closer to a mishmash type setup instead of this, which is obviously much more vanilla. This setup is very interesting. Like you said, one jack of all trades is much more powerful once the other one dies. That's already been noted. The other interesting thing to me is how do you leave potentially important information in the thread, or do you leave potentially important information in the thread in case you die at night? Obviously it goes with you. So does it make sense to play if I'm the jack of all trades, then blah, blah, blah. Does it make sense to play that game? Does it make sense for everybody then to get in on that action and try and, lay
some cover. Let me explain some context here. Me and DWetzel both originate from the same community, 2+2, where the cup setup.
You came from PokerNet.
Yeah, but sure, a poker community in any case, where it's very popular for games to have cups, actually to be centered around cups, and so people leave cover, which means that if I'm the cup, then I investigated this person this night, and I got this result, and everyone leaves this cover, so that even when someone who isn't the cup dies, you can sort of call someone cup hunt cleared, is what we call it, a seer hunt cleared. Of course, that can sometimes be a dangerous assumption to make, but it's also dangerous for the Mafia to make those kills and thereby give up one night of actually cup hunting. So it's a game of give and take in that sense. And so what I think DWetzel is referring to here is it an optimal strategy for everyone in the game, in this Jote game, to say, if I'm the Jote, I use the dock action this night and I save this person. And I think there could be some very good benefits to that strategy, because imagine if you're a Jote and there are two very strong results you can get. One is saving someone, especially, that also goes, you can only have that clarity if you're the only Jote. But let's say you protect someone and you're the only Jote, then you know that that person is town. Because the Mafia can't kill themselves and they can no kill. The kill is mandatory. Or you track someone to the kill. So you have a confirmed result there. And if no one leaves cover, then often you're probably bound to have to just out the result, because if no one else is leaving cover, even if you try to leave it as cover, it's pretty obvious. I don't know what you guys and anyone can jump in here. Do you think that should be a strategy in these games? To leave cover?
In a vacuum, yes. Historically, with champs towns having been traditionally as how do I word this nicely? Uncoordinated as they have been, it probably just isn't worth it to put it into practice.
Maybe right, and that of course means, as Thingy said, you've got to if you're the Jote and you've got something in the end game, you're just gonna have to out it then, and just sacrifice yourself, take the 1-for-1, and obviously if it's a wolf, if it's a town peak effectively that you have, if you've saved someone,
right,
then obviously you might want to sit on that a little bit more if they're not in any danger, but you probably would have to out yourself for the 1-to-1. You have a good numbers advantage in this game. Most of what I'm used to is from 2+2 is the traditional 13er, and you've got 15 in this, so you do have a little more raw village power on the other end.
It's needed.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Let us talk about claiming and whether to believe claims, and if anything is special for this setup, especially because there are two Jotes. Say you have someone claim Jote on day 1, day 2, or day 3. Do you believe those claims? Do you offer them a stay of execution, or how do you approach that?
I would say context. Context is everything. I mean, y'all can comment on that too, but I think the difference between day 1, 2, 3 matters drastically. In terms of how you're going to interpret that claim.
I would agree with that. I think, in general, and again, time of day matters on this sort of thing too, and the reason that the person is claiming. In general, day 1 or day 2, I don't think it's a big deal to, give them a stay of execution for one night. Because if they are the jack of all trades, obviously, the Wolves are going to have to deal with that at some point pretty soon. That's a very dangerous game for them to play, to let that person, dangle and play the game of, oh, they haven't killed him, he must not actually be that.
Especially if the Wolves are down in numbers, if they lose one early to a D1 Lynch or something, because then it just becomes exponentially more powerful. Yeah,
and then they just have to take that and kill them. So you never want to lynch your Joe. That's like the ultimate, suicide play. If they're in the position where they're in danger and they just have to claim, do it sensibly, 20 minutes before end of day or so, whatever gives everybody time, and just say, guys, here it is. I think that's the optimal play if they're in a situation where they're going to get lynched rather than trying to fight it. It's a monumentally stupid play for a villager to take that line, I think 98% of the time, and I predict you will see it at least in a couple of your games anyway.
Very likely.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes scum do try the desperation claim, though. Maybe not on day 1, but they just try to claim before getting lynched just to draw out the counter claim.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of transparent when it happens. So in that case, just lynch them anyway. But yeah, if they claim early, it'll have to be dealt with. They're not going to get away with it for a whole game. So if you have an alternative, I think it's fine to just lynch elsewhere.
Yeah.
Do scum fake claim enough in championship games?
They fake claim about exactly enough in the Mountainous season, Delta season.
They fake claim at Lilo, like I said earlier. Sometimes they just fake claim at Lilo, and then some poor townie says, "No, I'm actually that role," and they get lynched because it's champs. So
right, yeah. I joked earlier, but it's really season dependent. Last year setup season Beck won. That was a very role intensive setup, and I believe that there were not only fake claims but fake results, including in your finale by one of your Mafia team partners.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking back, like, again, totally season dependent, but I'm thinking even in our wild card too, that we entered the final day. There was 3 of us. It was 3 of us of the 7 left, and we manufactured a fake claim, or at least the claim was real in terms of actions, but you couldn't deduce if that was something that the villager did or the wolf did, and it put us in a power position where the village really had no choice but to believe the first claim.
Right.
And we ended up forcing 2 villagers to vote each other pretty quickly, and we won the game. And so you're totally right. It definitely depends on the weight of the power rolls that you have, but I think it's totally fair game, and I think you're going to see it here, whether it's the right thing to do or not. You're going to see a wolf do it eventually.
Yeah, and something I've noticed, townies really like to believe the first claim. I don't know what it is. I think people just like to take the path of least resistance. So if the Mafia claims first, they just assume it's the truth. Oh, that person claimed cop. They gave us a result on a silver platter. It's so easy to just hope it's true and go along with it. You really, really can't do that. You have to question everything.
All right. So moving on from that to something related. Or actually, no, let us wrap this part up with predictions. So there are 11 qualifier games. Let's just stick to the qualifiers because the wild cards, or semifinals as they're called this year.
Yes.
Well, actually, let me explain that quickly. The system works differently this year. I'm not sure you all know. I don't know if you checked the setup, DWetzel. But for the first time ever, no one qualifies directly to the finale. We have semifinals. So what was kind of the wild cards before is just what everyone moves into, those who get that spot. So some are voted directly to the wildcards or semifinals, and I think about 23 people are advanced by the jury. And we'll perhaps also touch on jury stuff later, because as fans of the championship knows, if you ever gotten to be a finalist, that means you're automatically on the jury next year. And I believe everyone present here has served as a jury member, me included.
Yes.
I didn't win my season, but I got 5th place in DWetzel season 1. We were townies together, alive at the end together, Lynch the Wolf together. Good times. But he stole the crown from me. But predictions. 11 qualifier games. Beck, you're up first. How many will Town win?
Good question. I think it's gonna, because last year it was almost.
Do you want qualifiers or do you want the entire package? Because it's pretty similar either way.
Yeah. Last year was predominantly Wolves. I'm not as familiar with the stats on 5 as well, but like Thingy said, it's generally Wolves. I think it's gonna be a little bit closer to a split this year. Just from kind of the players that I've seen, I think the more that we've done kind of championships, you see a lot of returning players, which is always awesome. You see a lot of people who are more familiar with Mafia Universe setup. So my hope is at least that we're going to see a few more Town wins than we have in the past. I wouldn't call it 50%, but I'd probably say it's going to be closer to that.
I have to respond to chat because they're wondering if I'm even looking at chat, and I am indeed. There's been some funny comments. I know GH is providing backstage information to them about my green screen. This is indeed a green screen. This is not my
demand to know.
And my sexy radio voice is thanks to something called voice meter. It's not my natural voice.
You are, however, hearing my natural voice, because unlike some of us, I do not need artificial modification in order to bring forth these sweet, dulcet tones to all of you.
Yeah. Sweet tones. And we also had someone, I think, Flush, call out Dels. He was very thrown off by the fact that you're not a yellow monkey. It's very peculiar. All right. GH, your predictions.
Yes. All right. So part of my pessimism is due to the fact that I am around a week or two removed from just very thoroughly researching an article on the worst champs mislynches of all time. So I've been knee deep in just this cesspool of poor champs towns. But I'm going to say 8-3. Wolves win 8. Town wins 3.
All right. Dels?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well, because I agree on paper we might get closer to the 50-50, but I'm not optimistic enough about that, so I would go with 3 Town wins. Yeah.
DWetzel, are you more optimistic about the Town?
No, but I'm going to say 6-5 Village anyway, because if I'm right, I look brilliant, and if I don't, nobody's going to remember this anyway. So I have no reason for that, but we'll say they get lucky a couple times, and there.
All right, so that's official. DWetzel is a Town believer.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I think let's contextualize. In season 1, did Town win any of the qualifiers?
I don't remember. They didn't win mine. I know that because it's
and mine wasn't won by the Town either.
The final was. We did that. We pulled that one off.
We won the finale. Yeah. So I think that was 1 Town victory out of 5 in season 1. Season 2, that was the Cup 13er. That was won by some towns, I think, but it was less than 50-50. But that was also proven to be a balanced setup, at least 2+2. And the third one, was that Mountainous?
Third one was Matrix 12.
Matrix 12, right. And that was maybe 2 Town wins or something?
Game 8, that was my qualifier. We won that one.
Yeah.
I think whichever one Beck wasn't in. I don't want to single you out, Beck, but
we're not going to talk about that one.
I get 4 and 5 season mixed up a lot. I think it was 4 that the Town won for that one.
Lisa is confirming in chat 2 Town wins in the qualifiers out of 8, and then Town took wildcards and finale. I know in the Mountainous season, amazingly enough, it was 4 Town wins out of 11, I believe.
I think it was like 5.
No, it was 4. I checked earlier.
Okay. You know what? I'm thinking of the games that went to final 3. I'm sorry.
It was 4 out of 11. And like if we get that, this is basically the same setup with 2 more additional roles for the town. So going off of that, this like DWetzel's prediction should be right if we're just going off stats and that small sample size. But it is indeed a small sample size. All right. Guys, if you have any questions, you can just post them in the chat. I'll try to pick them up. Chat is moving by a bit fast, which is very nice to see. But I'll try to note the questions. I have one thing I do want to talk about, and that's whether championship Mafia games in general just are more Mafia favored.
Oh
like,
boy!
Like if you, like you take like the prime example, I think is the Cup 13 setup we used in season 2, which was tested across hundreds of games on 2+2. These were players playing many games with each other, so they had bet on each other, and it was proven to be like almost exactly 50-50. Of course, the sample size can be better, but let's just be kind and say that that's an appropriate sample size, and it was a balanced setup, and it proved not to be in a championship environment. And what are reasons for that? Like, one of the reasons can be no meta on each other, like having to get used to the strange new place, like just technically using the functions and just feeling insecure. Another thing I often notice is people thinking that a lot of the other people know each other, so that you're feeling on the outs for some reason, which is strange.
Everyone thinks they're the only person new to MU, that everybody else in a set season has already played on MU and they are the sole outsider. It's amazing.
Yes. But there's one final thing, and I'll let you pick up on this. I'll just set the scene and you can take it away. But there's one final thing that I think maybe hasn't been talked about enough, and that actually relates to a belief I have, which is that Mafia is inherently a very Mafia favorite game. I believe that if everyone in the game tries the hardest they can, the Mafia will always win. That is my belief, yeah. And you can read my Powerwolfing article for that. But I believe if the Mafia actually try their hardest and also have the time for it, I believe it's a very time investment type game if they have the time for it. But in the championship, as opposed to regular games, and this is my point I'm getting to. In regular games, you often see Mafia not wanting to play or being down about not being town. After you played a while, at least, you start to want to be town because you want to play the detective side of the game. So you don't give it your all as Mafia, and you don't try to avoid lynches as much because you win with the team. And that's the point. In this championship, sure, you win with your team, but advancement is on the line. So
yes.
Yeah, sure, yay, your team won, but you didn't advance, so you didn't win in that sense. So every single individual Mafia member is probably trying their damnedest to outperform anything they've ever done. This isn't, of course, true for all, but it's more true than in regular games. How do you think this plays in, and do you think that is a big part of why it's Mafia favorite? I saw you had some reactions, Dels, so let's take it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to react to. You covered a lot. And also, I mean, I'm sure GH and I would say the same things about all of them.
Yeah.
But, well, first of all, let's talk. Yeah, the culture clash is a huge thing. Like I said, people take the path of least resistance, which means they are going to default to just lynching whoever just seems a little bit weird, whoever said something that you're not used to saying, or just whoever posts the least. And so a lot of games just seem to go on rails. They kind of just determine on day one who the weirdest people are, who the people posting the least are, and they just lynch them in a row. And then the Mafia win because all they need to do is just kind of slink by, seem relatively competent, seem somewhat engaged, and the town has no reason to lynch them. And of course, it's the Mafia who are more able to not do weird things because they're purposefully trying to, and the townies are not.
Right.
And then another thing you said you think that with high-level players, the Mafia have an advantage. But from what I've experienced, places that have a higher quality of player actually end up with more town wins. I mean, I guess I'm just thinking of DLP because I know.
Yeah, DLP is definitely. They seriously have to wolf-side their setups to make it.
Yeah.
50-50.
But that could be a meta thing. Basically, Thingy, is your argument that high-level players means Mafia will win more in a game of strangers? Because what about if they all have meta with each other? Doesn't that make it easier for the town?
Meta always makes it easier. It does.
Yeah.
So I think this is always more true for strangers than it is for people who know each other. And I've played in all-star games before, on my other sites where Town did win those games. But I also believe the Mafia didn't give it their all. So in this way, it's somewhat subjective. But I believe even on communities with high-level play, I think it's very Town oriented. I think because you play Town more often, you get more experience with that. I think because there are more Town in a game, like the whole talk and the whole mindset about Mafia. Often when you explain it to people, it's like you gotta find the Mafia. It's not you gotta lie to the others. You gotta find the Mafia. There's a Mafia. You gotta find it. All this talk is very centered around finding Mafia and being Town, because that's what you have more experience as, and that's also where you can feel more free and be honest. So that's my belief, why people often down prioritize the Mafia part of the game.
Yeah, fair.
What was another thought I had?
I can also think I can comment on. I think another thing that you mentioned that I find interesting, and I know Geech and I have spoken about this in the past, is the context around championships. The reason why you are playing is time. Anyone who is playing in this has been through election or voting at their home community, has been deemed the best player this year, or is the most recognizable in their home community, or is the one who's just most eager to participate. So you put a lot of, type A people into the same room in most cases. It depends, game to game, community to community. It's not all across the board, but generally you get a lot of type A people who want to win. And you start to see, especially in a village, and this may be a reason why village may not, I don't think this is the main reason, but I certainly think it's a contributing factor, is you start to play a little bit more to yourself. You play to the individual. And it's gotten to the point too where I've seen, even in games that I've played in the past, as far back as season 3, players mentioning that they're playing a certain way with the sole purpose to advance.
Absolutely.
Which is its own conversation, but that's something I've definitely seen too that I find fascinating, because it adds another layer, to an already social game. So that's something that you definitely want to consider when you're playing, not to your audience, but you're playing to your player list. It makes a big difference.
I have two comments on that, Beck, and very good thoughts that I agree with. Like a good allegory is maybe the current Survivor All-Winner season. Like
no spoilers.
No spoilers. But how it's played is just different than it would be in a regular season. And who does well in this season is different than who would do well in a regular season. And also related to this is the atmosphere and town core building. I think happens very differently in a Mafia Championship setting, partly because these players don't know each other, partly because they are used to different things. And we all know this, when there's something that you're not used to, it reads as strange, and you want to hold on to your own thing and push that thing away. Your thing is right, theirs is wrong. And there's less compromises in a championship setting than I think there should be. The strongest things I see, and this is my personal advice, I always get excited and I want to play myself, because I believe this is the strongest quality you can have as a town player in a game, is bringing people together. Building a good foundation for working together, and not people yelling at each other, being arrogant, and one thing that people drop the ball on is including players. Sometimes I'm reading these threads and I'm not playing in the game, so I hope I would also be picking up on this as a player. But what I see is there are people that aren't adapting as well to maybe even technically playing a side, or you can just see they're not following the conversation, or they seem strange, or maybe there's a language barrier and nothing is done about it. Because you need to be able to read those players, you need to be able to work with them if they're town, and you need to bring them in somehow. You need to work around it or work with them. And I just don't think that's the thing that's prioritized enough in championship games.
I would absolutely agree. And I've seen over the years too many town players, especially. You can see this at the Mafia players to a certain extent, but mostly the town players fall victim to something that I like to call Champ's Hero Syndrome. Yeah, I got a couple eye rolls from that. Yeah, I mean, it's a dumb name, but it's really the best way I can describe it, because you have too many people, instead of doing one thing you talked about, building the town cores, just kind of working together, working especially to bring in the people who may be in a little over their head, kind of bring them into the fold. It's instead people are going for the glory. And they say, look, I might not be in for this game very long. This guy is the most likely Wolfie player, but damn it, I think they're a wolf, and I may only have one shot at this, so we're going to go for them now while we still can. So they kind of, instead of kind of bringing everybody together as a village, they do their thing, they demand to get their way, and more often than not, they're at the target of their tunnel, flips an alignment that they don't necessarily want that person to flip.
And like, being good at this game is subjective, but I think adaptability is important. And this is an example I like to give. I played some games on Epic Mafia, which, to those who don't know, is a browser-based Mafia game. And it's kind of a young audience. Like, it's mostly teenagers playing on there, at least when I played some years ago. And I got lynched over and over again for not having an avatar. So the question is, are these people bad for lynching me, or am I bad for not adapting? My answer would be, I'm the bad player. It's an easy thing to adapt to. I know what's happening. I'm just choosing not to out of stubbornness. So I would say I'm the bad player. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, and like adapting and the importance of it?
Well, on that, you're both terrible because stupid reasons. But yes, but if you know somebody's going to do something stupid and you trigger it anyway, then yes, you're at fault too. You know what's going to happen. You bought your ticket, as they say. I say let you crash. So, yeah. And to go back a little bit on what the others were saying is, I think if you're playing for advancement, you're not really playing the game right.
You're also less likely to advance if you play for advancement.
Well,
yeah,
yes.
because we know this as the jury, and we just, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But
good team play is an important aspect of playing
it's
well.
the most important aspect of it. It's more important than being right, because if you build a team, then you actually can be wrong and still win, and that's even better. Because if you're playing the game where I'm going to lead this village and I'm right and everybody get behind me, well, you're not listening to anybody else. You're not getting all the information you should be getting from the game, because people have different perspectives. If you can't incorporate that into what you're thinking.
I think you also look at to Dwight's point is you look at information overload and a lack of information. Different players are in the thread at different times, and different players associate themselves with different personalities, different ways. So to really put yourself at least as a villager in the best possible place to succeed, you need to have those conversations. You're only selling yourself short, regardless of advancement or anything like that, if you're not doing the due diligence and looking for those additional perspectives, because they exist. So that's really important too.
I have an important question from the chat. I'll direct this to you, Dels. Does having an anime girl profile pic make you more or less likely to be lynched than having no avatar?
Why is this directed to me? But no avatar is definitely the worst. If you have no avatar, you're more likely to be lynched. And this isn't a joke. Like, literally having an avatar means people are more likely to remember your posts, even just by a little bit. They're more likely to get some sort of vibe from you. And the more they remember you and get your vibe, if you're town, the vibe is a townie vibe. So actually, it's not just like some joke. Having an avatar helps.
I also think people make avatar reads in games, whether they're conscious or unconscious of them. Like, if a guy has an avatar that's literally a wolf, people are gonna and there was a guy who was like this in the last season. Incarnate, I think was his name, and he could have posted the most towny thing in the world, but it was a literal picture of a wolf saying this. So you're always going to have that suspicion in the back of your mind.
All right. So let's summarize the good tips here. 1, have an avatar.
Yes.
Preferably not of a wolf or anything fishy. 2, don't play to advance.
Yes, absolutely.
And 3, be mindful of creating a good atmosphere and thread and bring others into the fold. Like if you see others are lacking behind, do your best to bring them into the fold. And also, like, this is another benefit of that. They're probably more likely to vote for you post game, so you can have that in mind. Be kind to your fellow players. Being kind in general is always a good tip. And hey, it works in Mafia as well. Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
I'll return to this in a second. I want to do because I found an interesting statistic here. Everyone in Twitch chat, feel free to give your guesses as well. So this is probably 6 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe even. Someone on 2+2 did a statistical dive on everyone who had played like 20 or more games on 2+2, and they were able to pull the data on how often they post as Mafia versus how often they post as Town.
Gosh, yes.
Sort of.
And
this ought to be interesting. Yeah.
And this sample size included, I think, about 300 players. So out of 300 players, and this question I posed to all of you, out of 300 players, how many out of those do you think posted either the same amount as Town and Mafia or more as Mafia? Either the same amount or more as Mafia.
20.
Out of 300 players.
20.
Did you say 20?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
5.
I'd say no more than 30.
I'll say 7.
10%.
DWetzel say 7. Dels no more than 30. Beck?
I said 5. Beck said
Oh,
more than 30.
Oh, and you
Yeah.
say 5.
Only because it's 2+2, but I don't know if that's against the rules. Anyway.
What did you say, DWetzel?
I said 7.
You said 7. All right. So it was 10.
Oh, okay.
It was 10 players, and that was, and out of those, only 4 posted more as Mafia. I believe Systolic was one of them. I was among the 10 players. I was among the few that posted the exact same amount as Town and Mafia. The exact same amount. CP Hoyer was also on that line. He also posted the exact same as Town and Mafia. Those of you, I think everyone here knows CP Hoyer. Former Mafia Championship finalist. Oh, you don't know him, Dels?
Dels, he made a great
I know the copy
pasta.
pasta. Yes, I know the copy pasta, but other than that.
All right. Yeah, a former championship finalist in season 1. I don't think he played the final, but he advanced to the final. And also Super Mafia All-Star, for those of you who know that. All right, let's return to, and we've already talked about this. You 4 guys are winners. Like, let's do it as a game. So we'll start with DWetzel and we move on. And you have to give one advice to people playing the season. Like, what's one thing that you think really helped you win your season? What's like the one thing you would tell a new player? This is what you should do.
And for a new player, period, starting the game, I would say just you have to. This is going to sound really stupid and really simplistic, but read the thread every day. Go back, read it later. It has all the information you need, and it really does most of the time to at least make educated guesses.
Yes.
Which is really what the game is about, is making educated guesses 98% of the time. There are no absolutes in this game. But seemingly innocuous things that get said on day one that in the context of day one mean absolutely nothing to anybody, and they shouldn't mean anything to anybody. When you go back on day 5 and you read that, it'll mean something.
Yeah.
And just read. And then when you're posting, just put people under pressure to not necessarily even whether they're a villager or they're a wolf, but start making associations between them and other people in the game. Because what you start to do, I think what early game is about, is building associations between people, kind of building the thoughts in your head of, okay, if this person is a villager, then that one probably is too, because blah, 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 blah. And you don't know whether that first person is or not, but you're going to find out eventually.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just build those associations between people. And that's kind of how I've always tried as a villager to solve the game. And as a wolf, you still want to make those associations because it does things like help you pick out power roles. You know, gee, this person was going after them pretty hard the first few days, and then they suddenly stopped. Why? maybe they know something now. But really just read. And then when you're sick of that and you felt like posting for a little bit, stop, read it again, and then you can post.
I think that's solid advice. I know a guy named Soa who would
yeah.
super much agree with you. Because what he talks about is information overload. And I think that plays into what you're saying, DWetzel, so you'll probably agree. You can tell us if you do. Like, instead of posting without being really aware of what has already been posted and like having opinion on that or doing an analysis of that, like using that, there's already so much stuff behind you. Use that before you just do more fluff or post, or which makes it maybe quite difficult for other players to follow the game as well.
Yeah, it's that. I think it's so many people post frequently based on kind of surface level thought, gut level observation of, well, I kind of feel like they're a wolf, therefore I'm just going to jam this into the ground and tell everybody I think they're a wolf. I'm not going to tell you how certain I am of that or really why I feel that way. But just calling somebody a villager or calling somebody a wolf is easy for wolves to do too.
Yeah.
You know, I can say, oh, I think Beck's a villager. No, I didn't see the tail back there. Really? What? No. So,
so essentially you're creating an environment where it's easy for wolves to blend in.
Exactly. Yes. Whereas if you make people post their thought, it's easy to fake that. It's harder to fake thought process of how you get there. I think I was pretty good at that when I played, of faking the thought process of, oh, I can defend that wolf in such a way that it makes sense. And hopefully, number one, persuade some people. But number two, if it doesn't work, I've got plausible deniability. So that, because the wolves obviously have to work together, but you can't take each other down too. So one easy way to do that is if nobody cares what you're saying, then it's easy to just, do whatever. But if you make people post detailed, okay, you say that person's a villager or that person's wolf, why? Number one, you might learn something that you missed, because people tend to focus on different things. There is only so much you can focus on at one time. But
yeah. All right, and let's take it over to you, Beck. And the game here is that you can't repeat anything that DWetzel said.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't even use the same words. No, I'm kidding.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna start talking in French.
So to give some context, last season, my qualifier, I was a villager. I made it through happenstance into the wild card where I was a wolf, and then I advanced from the wild card as a wolf to the finale where I was also a wolf. So I'll be honest, I'll leave most of the villager advice to some of these other guys. They're way more talented villagers than I am. Wolf advice, generally things that I did. Two things I try to lean on is, and I mentioned this earlier, know your player list. It doesn't matter, your home community. It doesn't matter who's in the spec chat. It's your player list that matters most. So what I did is I tried to get a handle on, if I read player X, we'll say if I read GH as a wolf, how might he react?
What? Do you read me as a wolf? What is that? Happened?
Crazier things about it. Never. But that's an example where, if I know GH might be a little bit more of an aggressive player, like in this example, and he may not be as receptive to that, steering my read around that and steering the game, because in a lot of ways as a wolf in some of these high pressure situations, you're navigating personalities, and you're navigating, the lynch and the night kill. So on that note, another piece of advice that I would say is there are a couple players that I signaled out as being really talented players that were capable of leading a village. I didn't bother tussling with those players because I knew I was going to off them at the night. So prioritizing your players, around that is something that I always try to do as a wolf. I wouldn't go so far as to plan, your miss lynches and your night kills out days in advance. I work, at a day at a time. But having an eye for that kind of information is going to make your job easier. And quite frankly, you're going to piss off less people and you're going to get less attention as you do it. So know your player list as you're kind of, working through that as you go. And it takes time and it's not always easy. The other piece of advice that I like in general, not just for champs, but when I play wolf, is to make things that aren't important seem important.
Yeah,
it drags the conversation away from things that actually are important. And like DWetzel said, you want to bring people together. You want to read the thread. If villagers are putting out good information and you're dragging away from that, you're wasting time. And time in post count is valuable, and it creates, again, that information overload, and it makes villagers make silly mistakes. So finding ways to flood the thread with information that feels important in the moment but really isn't is a great way to mislead a village. So that's 2 pieces of advice I'd give to any wolves out there. So
that's good advice, Beck. All right, so just a public service announcement. I believe that there's a current ongoing championship game with the day is ending in 1 minute. Someone in the Twitch chat can correct me if that's wrong.
No, that's correct. That is correct.
All right, so I'll do this thing, and you guys can mute your mics, and I'll replay the teaser that I started the podcast with, and you guys can go check out what's happening in the meanwhile, and then we'll be back here in I think it's only 30 seconds. So I'll go and do that. Be right back, guys. Did someone get lynched?
We're about 5 seconds away.
We're about 5 seconds away. All right. We won't comment on the game. We will be doing postmortems. This won't be the only podcast there will be. Maybe some of these guys will rejoin me for a future podcast. I hope so. Certainly hope so. But let's say we can tell who got lynched and what alignment they were. That's fine.
Looks like we had a villager lynch.
A villager lynch. CJ got lynched. Playing for the sports, I believe. They're participating for the first time. All right.
Spoiler alert to Twitch chat in case you're not following, by the way. I apologize.
Yeah.
I didn't know Chemist was in the game. I saw Chemist post. I'm like,
yeah, he subbed in
Chemist,
US time.
Yes, Chemist subbed in for Oro Maki.
Can I say one of the most stressful parts about Mafia Universe is the countdown timer? In a game like this, there is no more pressure than that 5-minute countdown timer. It's great, but man, you can feel the heat.
Yeah, absolutely,
for sure. All right. Let's see. What should we move on to? Time is going. We got a copy pasta from Jail up in Twitch chat.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
Let's now that we're talking about this game, let's turn our attention to the games this season, the schedules.
All right.
Do you guys have any great expectations of either certain players or certain lineups this season? I know I have, but I just want to hear if.
Well, the one thing that I noticed when all the players were announcing that they were representing in the general thread was that there were quite a lot of returning players from the season finale, in which I won season 5. I believe there's like 6 separate players who played in the season 5 finale that are coming back for another shot this time. So I just want to give a shout out to each and every one of them in no particular order. DS, Silver Keith, Our Apocalypse, Psycho Soldier, I'm forgetting the last 2, Boquies, and Hey Monkey. All of them deserve to go as far as they possibly can, and I'm rooting for each and every single one of them. Hopefully they'll all meet again, and the town players can maybe exact some revenge this time around. Semifinal or even a finale game.
Yeah, to build on that, I'll just summarize. We actually have 9 former finalists playing this season. So we have Sir Chris, aka Achromatic. He already played and died. From GameFAQs, Dels' community. He played in season 2, made the finale there. We have Jagged Jimmy J. He played for something called Rage Music back then, but he's now a player on the Syndicate.
Yes.
Many of the players migrated to there. He was also a finalist in season 2, right? Yeah,
yes.
season 2. Yes. So we have 2 season 2 finalists returning, and then Violet, I believe, from Kiev.
Yes. I forgot to mention Violet. I apologize, Violet. Yes.
Yeah. So Violet, Apocalypse, Silverkeith, Bokeith, Hey Monkey, Cypher,
DS.
and BS. Yeah. So that's 9 former finalists returning. That's
awesome.
That's awesome. It's good to see people back. And like on that note, actually, raise your hand if you won the first time you played in the championship.
Beck and Dels. Wetzel and Dels.
Yeah,
Oh,
Wetzel.
Were we the only ones?
Yeah, I guess that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beck and
Not
I.
first game, but yeah.
Yeah. So that what I want to say is that Beck and GH, you had to try more than once.
Part of this actually goes into the question that you asked Wetzel and Beck, but didn't get around to for myself and Dels. Just my first finale experience was disappointing. I don't think I played I played poorly, but it was just one of those where the village did a lot of what Wetzel was talking about, and they just read everything and they made themselves excessively villagery very early on, and they just teamed up. They teamed up right away, and after about a day and a half, probably even before that, it just became very clear that that game was 13 villagers beating each other over the head with a stick on how villagery they were. And then the 4 of us who ran to Wolf were just like, oh, okay, this is fun. And we just got squished. So I knew coming into my second season, the season I ended up winning season 5, that I wanted to do better. Not even to win the championship. I didn't really care about that. I just wanted to just put in a better performance in the finale. So coming into the tail end for that, there was just always that desire, just, all right, you know what happened, just make sure that doesn't happen again. Go the extra mile, go over the line if you have to. And
so would you agree with that,
obviously
Beck?
It worked.
Like, there's experience in general with Mafia, but there's also championship experience. And the championship is its own thing.
As much as I hate the answer that I'm about to give, I do think the champs experience is its own thing. I wish it wasn't, but it's its own ecosystem to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
So touching on that, Beck, would you agree that your previous experience helped you, and would you expect the finals we're seeing this season to also do quite well, or even better than the last time?
Yeah, so I agree with GH's assessment. I don't feel great giving that answer, but they're really different beasts again because of the elements that add to it. But you get a lot. Like, I think any of us can attest to this. There are a lot of players that come out of the woodwork from communities that we don't know as well, that just do amazing, and they fit right in, and they get it because they're smart. Players who have a lot of experience. We've got a couple here that have won. So I think it's a mixed bag in that regard. I would say it definitely helped me personally. Back in season 3, I joined Mafia Universe just after season 2 when it kind of just came about. Season 3 was the next big thing. I joined, and I was still pretty experienced as a werewolf player anyway. So having watched season 4 and season 5 and taking some time off, and frankly growing as a person too, you just get better at the game. So I think for me personally, it was really beneficial. And it definitely changed my mindset entering kind of game 7 last year, my qualifier. How I wanted to approach players, how I wanted to be perceived by players, regardless of advancement. So I think for me personally, there was a sense of maturity to going from season 3 to season 6. Yeah.
And we also have like other finalists who played. Like we have Soa, who actually qualified for the season 1 finale but didn't play, but then played again and made it to the finale, played and got, I think, 2nd or 3rd in that game. So there's a record of former finalists going back and then just crushing it again. So if that's any indicator, we'll have those 9 people doing well probably this season as well. What was the question I was headed to? I forgot.
I know on the agenda you had like our predictions to win at some point. I don't know if you still want to ask that.
Yeah, no, I want to know your predictions win, but let's also talk about like the games, like the stacked games. Like I have one game that I want to call attention to, so let me actually just bring that up. I'll try here, so Twitch chat can see it. I'll enlarge it. I'm just gonna.
Oh wow! Look at that.
For the moment, I'm gonna bring it over the chat. Sorry, guys. All right. So for those of you who don't have Twitch chat open or the stream open, sorry. Game 11, the last game this season. We have Super Mafia. I'm just gonna. Well, actually, let me also focus on names, but it's also the communities, and that's also what I want to talk about. Which communities seem to just do well in this event? We have Colin from Super Mafia All Stars.
All Stars has traditionally been very strong.
Yeah. We have Grumrower from the Avocado. Avocado came storming onto the scene last season, qualified for the finale.
Spiny creature.
Very strong first appearance, yeah, and he got, like, I think, third, right? Yes. We have someone from PokerNet, which is my side. We have Nelson. Like, he started playing in 2009 with me, I think.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't then play for a decade. He only just got back. So he has that, like, he has the, I wouldn't say experience, but like he's not new, but then he has that new spirit, right? So I think he has a good combination there. I think, and just the poker mindset, we're going to maybe talk about this, but I think being from a poker side is maybe beneficial. Like, that game is about reading people, so there's obvious benefits there, right? We have Pilga from Wolfia Discord. It's a Discord centered around the game. We have Saigo, a previous finalist. We have $2 million from Board Game Geek, a very strong community that's played, like, they've played thousands of games. I know $2 million has played more than 100 games, hosted almost 50 games. I think having hosted games is also a big advantage.
That's impressive.
We have Wisdom from Mafia Sverige. That is Swedish scumbags community. Obviously a Mafia-oriented community, and he also qualified for finale. And then I also want to call attention to, of course, Hey Monkey, previous finalist as well.
Yes.
And we have Human Dawn. And Human Dawn may be unknown to many people. From
that name sounds familiar for some reason.
He's played on Mafia Universe before. He did very well. He was actually supposed to represent Bulb Garden in a previous season, season 2 or 3, I don't know, but had to drop out. But I've seen him play, and I would keep an eye out on this guy. Like, he has the level-headedness that I would expect of a good townie. Of course, then we have some newcomers. We have Hectic from Warwick Mafia Society, and they're Mafia-oriented as well. And Mafia communities usually do well. So all in all, like, this is just epic lineup, I think. I think Game 11 is one to look out for.
The last game in qualifiers, so make sure you pay attention for the entire thing, Twitch chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't want to miss a single moment.
I also want to call attention to another game. Let me find it here. There we go. Game 7.
Yes.
Game 7. Let me enlarge that. All right. So in Game 7, we have, and actually, let me preface this with a question. Of course, it's sort of spoiled maybe by this picture. Those of you who have it up. But what is the one community in the Mafia Championship that has made it to the finals every single season?
Believe that would be Flash Revolution.
That is Flash Revolution. So what's up with that? Like, we're talking about, okay, poker sites, they can be expected to do well, but then you have Flash Revolution making it to the finals, crushing it every single season, even producing 2 finals one year, because one of them subbed in for another community, and he just also made it to the finals because why not, right?
Right.
So, like, we have Flash Revolution, obviously one to look out for. We have Giraffe Boards. We have GOG, which has also produced the finals. We have our own site, Mafia Units. We have Mafia Landy, a Spanish Mafia site. We have Marshmallows from SC2 Mafia, also a Mafia-centered site. This is also looking like a very strong lineup to me. HeroClix Realms has also produced finalists before and wildcard spots before. And the final one I want to call attention to, it's Game 6. Like, this is what I followed the talk in spectator chat, and these are the games that people are looking really forward to. Game 6, we have Dark Lord Potter, probably one of the 3
very good pedigree.
Like one of the top 3 communities. Like, if you're looking at the record in the Mafia Championship series, yeah. Play Diplomacy has also done very well. We have DS, a former finalist. We have Jagged Jimmy J, a former finalist. We have Smogon, which has also done well. Then we have maybe a controversial one, Epic Mafia, who I would say, because of them being a browse game and the user base they have, people maybe have some low expectations of them. But actually, based on how they've done when they have played, especially in Season 1, where they had 2 finalists, doesn't seem very fair. Like, they seem to actually do very well, the serious players they have on Epic Mafia. So that might also be one to look out for. Of course, we have Wisp.
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah. Cobalt, yeah, from Dark Report. Also varies, and Carrot from Garuagu, also a werewolf centered site.
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts on like communities? Like, what communities do you think would do well, or do you even think there's talk about that? Because then Flash Rush Revolution is doing very well. Dark Lord Potter is like a fanfic Harry Potter related site. Why is that doing well? Like, what are your thoughts on that and the strengths that each fandom or theme has?
Anyone else want to take this?
Well, I'll start just by saying it's awesome that we've got a sense of lineage now, that the communities have begun to build a reputation about how they perform, and so that adds another element, to stepping into these games as someone that may already have a target on their back. It builds the sense of meta before there's actually meta. So that's exciting. I'll just leave it at that. There's a couple that I'm really excited about to see, players more in particular than communities in general, but that's something that I find really fascinating, being in season 7 now that we get to talk about that.
Exactly. Like, what I'm just mind blown by is like we have these expectations each season, and I can reveal that we even had drafts in the past, or I was part of drafts where we tried to like predict who would do well, and we didn't really have any reason to think some of them would do well. It was just pure guesses. But like then we have, like each season, we have new communities storming onto the scene and just performing super well. Like we had Kule, the Finnish side, they just 2 out of 2 seasons, they produced finalists. We have Liars Club Online, made it to the final, I think got 2nd or 3rd last year after participating for the first time. Grey Dog Software making it to the finals, participating for the first time. The Avocado, Reset Era, Raja, Space Battles, the list goes on and on. Like there's no saying that anyone is out of this, which I think is good to see. Like we want new blood, and that's what I'm excited about.
Absolutely.
So like if you guys, I don't know if you've looked over the list, if you had to like give a guess at a new community that you think gonna do well, what's your guess?
New community?
Yeah. Like something you don't recognize. Make a bold prediction.
I want to say this isn't necessarily a new community, but I'm going to say one of the Facebook groups that plays Mafia is going to do well. I think somebody's going to break that mold.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of those past seasons, and had a couple of people that I've seen, but I don't think they've ever really advanced that particularly that far. But I think this is the year for one of them.
I think that's very interesting, because I would agree. They have, well, let's just say it, because this is also a compliment, I think. They have underperformed in terms of how strong their communities are. They're very strong communities. They're not very public unless you've joined the Facebook groups, but I'm part of the Facebook groups, and they are super strong. Like, I think some of them even spawned from Board Game Geek, and like they're all board game enthusiasts. So, like, if you know about the level of play of Board Game Geek, you can sort of expect the same level of play on these Facebook groups. And I think that's definitely something to watch out for. And even though in some of the games they're playing with each other, so that might also be interesting to see. Because one thing that people don't know is that they know each other, these Facebook groups. They have their own
meta.
Yeah, overlapping player bases and meta with each other. So it's not separate, at least most of them. Yeah. Oh, I remember where we were. Before the break, we came back from break. That's right. Advice to new players. Dels.
Were we going back to that?
Yeah.
So
you're on the spot, buddy. You can't get out of that so easily.
Sorry.
There's a million things I could say, but I'll go with, I think, an important one. Treat other players as if their opinion is just as valuable as your own. So there's a lot of people who sort of talk to other people and they just say, these are my reads, these are who the scum are. And they don't actually spend any time saying, well, who do you think the scum are? What do you think about what I just said?
Right.
And not just saying it, actually meaning it, actually listening to the other person, and actually sometimes saying, okay, let's go with what you want. So I think that's a really important thing. And then my other major piece of advice is every time you have a read that you are certain is right, and there's someone who you're saying, I am certain this person is scum, there is no way they are going to flip town, try to think back to all of the past times that you thought that and they flipped town anyway. And really ask yourself, what makes this different from all of those times? Why am I sure this time that I'm not wrong? Those are my top 2 pieces of advice.
R.I.P. Brain Bomb.
Boom, bye, scum. All right, that's good advice, Dels. That's very good advice. Like I don't know why people don't sometimes stop themselves and think, I've been in this situation before and I was wrong. Why am I so confident in this? Why I'm putting the game on the line for this? A funny quote from Karen in a Twitch chat. We always ask who are the wolves, but we never ask how are the wolves. I like that. GH, last man up. And actually, I want to tie this into something because we're sort of running out of time. So I'll combine this with another theme on our subject list. So for those of you who don't know, on Mafia Units we have a place for theory articles about what we think about the game, like often strategy type articles. I've wrote one about powerwolfing, and GH has wrote a very popular recent one about the top 10 missed lynches in championship history, or at least
the worst 10. I don't want to give this title a superlative. The worst 10.
The worst 10. Though it should be said, this is from I think season 3 onwards to season 4.
Yeah, because that's when I started following season 3.
Yeah, there were some pretty horrible ones. I think DWetzel will testify to that in season 1 as well. Anyways, because we're running low on time, you guys can keep me updated when you have to leave. But walk me through one of the worst missed lynches GH and talk to us about what was so bad about it and what people can learn from it.
All right. This didn't make number 1 on the list. It's only number 2 on the list. But the number 1 was just such a unicorn of a situation. Honestly, there's some things you can get out of it, but not really that much that can be applied in every single game.
You're disappointing Twitch chat right now.
You know what? Twitch chat's still going to get a story. So let's talk about lynch number 2 on the list. And number 2 is fitting because that lynch really was a piece of poop. And I'm talking about season 4, game 11, day 1. Sue was lynched, and the main driver of that lynch was an individual who pretty much went forward in time, listened to everything we talked about in terms of pieces of advice and good town play and everything, took that advice to heart, went back in time, and purposely just decided to I'm going to do the opposite of that, everything. He believed in not really talking about info or getting in other people's heads or not really saying much of anything, for example, because his biggest fear was that doing that would give the Mafia information on where the town's coming from. And that way, if none of the town said anything, all the town held their cards close to their chest, the Mafia would eventually be the only ones talking, and they would be forced to inevitably scum slip. So his accusation was basically like, by the way, Sue, you're a wolf. Defend yourself against my accusations. And Sue was like, what are the accusations? And then the response is, and I swear to God, this isn't verbatim, this is a very close paraphrase. If you were a town, you would know what my accusations were and you would know how to defend yourself without asking me that question. And this utter nonsense, this just complete lunacy of a strategy just went back and forth for a while. But that's not the worst part of it. The worst part of it is it picked up steam. 7 people out of 15 voted for Sue that day, which was a plurality, and 5 of those 7 were villagers. So even if you're not the person who's like doing this completely asinine strategy that makes no sense in any reasonable universe, you still have to take other people's strategies into account. The main thing I wanted people to get out of that article more than anything else is it really does take a village to lynch. It is a communal effort, whether you lynch correctly or whether you lynch incorrectly. And just because I'm making fun of the guy for doing that initial ridiculous logic, there were still 4 other people that voted along with him. There are 4 other people that looked at that case and looked at that questioning and said, you know, that's pretty smart. I agree with what this guy's saying. And that, sorry, I'm on my soapbox, but I just fucking hate this lynch. you have to work as a team, and you have to challenge other people, and you really have to engage them. If you see something that doesn't look right to you, do something about it, and just don't let anything stupid pass. Do not fall victim to bystander syndrome.
Yeah,
that's very, very solid storytelling, GH.
God, I hate that story. I hate that story exists. But if it does exist, I might as well at least do my best at getting something out of it.
That whole game was a sue. Oh, yeah. Sorry for the pun. Actually, related to that, do you think this happens? This is a pretty controversial thing. Do you think the following happens related to that? Do you think people hardcore push people to be wolves in the hopes that, well, if they're right, they look brilliant? They might even doubt themselves. They might even think, I don't actually have the skills to convince people that I'm a good player. So what I have to go for is broke.
Yes.
I have to just laser in on someone, and if I'm right here, I look like a goddamn genius, and I'm gonna advance. Do you think this is something that happens?
Yep.
Yes, I don't even think that's necessarily people are thinking in terms of I'm going to advance. It's even in a normal game, people do that, and they'll think I can do this, and I'm taking the hero shot, and if I'm right, I can prove I'm a villager, and now you guys all know. Whereas instead of just being normal, making the case, this goes back to certainty of reads that I talked about earlier. It's okay to think somebody's a wolf. It's okay to say you think somebody's a wolf. It's not okay to think somebody's a wolf and say they are.
Yeah.
And just to say, like, a lot of people, even people who aren't falling deep into it, have this impression that the only way to win, to advance, or whatever is to be the person who comes up with the foolproof, solid case and is never wrong about anything and just drives every lynch through. And it just literally is not the case. I mean, I'm on this podcast and I was wrong about multiple things in my town games. There were multiple days where I just said, okay, I'll just do what other people want. There were multiple times where I just looked like a complete moron. And people still gave me votes in the end. So I hope it's somewhat proof that you just don't need to be this perfect god of Mafia who's never wrong about anything.
Right.
If you
can't all be
move forward,
we got to be who we best we can.
I can comment on this specifically going back to Game 5, Season 3, where and I think it was number 7 on GH's list as well. One of the worst mislynches that I had a direct hand in it too. And it's we strung off 3 wolf lynches in a row, day 1, 2, 3, and I was sitting there feeling powerful, quite frankly. Like I could not be wrong, powerful, and that mindset was extremely detrimental. I've learned since, but to the village, to other competent villagers who try to communicate with me, and I wouldn't have any of it. So, we ended up losing that game. We ended up losing that game in F3. And that just goes to show that even if you were right, you can still be wrong later or vice versa. So, important to always reassess and be reading like these guys have been saying here too. It's all the information is there for you.
Absolutely. I have 2 themes I want to touch on before we wrap up. And we've already talked about this, but I just want to bring people into jury chat. Because it's a mystery to people who haven't been there. And there have been many dissatisfied people throughout the years or throughout the seasons that are like, how could you make those decisions that you did? And I think one of the big themes is MVP versus best player. And there's a lot of subjectivity in this, and impact and versus potential or thought process and all that. And we've even advanced players that were mislynched. I at least can name Autolysis off the top of my head.
Auto Goat. He died for town sins. Sorry, I'm done.
Can you guys talk about so you I think have any of you served as jury member in the same season, or have it all been? I guess it's all been different seasons, right? Yeah. So you have the perspectives of 4 different juries. So this will be interesting to see if there's overlap. So talk to me about what were you looking for, and how was the process? Get into details. How was the process? How do you read all the games? Do you reread them? Do you have to skim? Do you divide it up? Do you have a spreadsheet, or do you do votes? Do you do secondary votes? How was the process for you guys? Just so it's unmystified for people wondering about how the jury works. And whoever can take it first.
Sure, I'll go first. So basically, I mean, it was a team effort, like a Mafia game. We read the games. There's no metric. People always ask if there's a metric. There's no metric. We don't say, well, you got 5 correct lynches and
Right, no.
you made 5 good wall posts and you did. It doesn't work that way. I mean, I think a lot of people understand exactly the things we look for because it's the same things that they look for in their post-game voting. You get a sense of who is a good player. You read the post and you see who's making the most sense. You see who's working together well with other people. And so then, at least in my season, we all just kind of posted our thoughts and then we figured out what the consensus was. And then we spent a lot of time narrowing it down. We did it just by like full consensus. Like I think some juries, they do a vote and then they just combine the results of their vote. But we just kind of talked it out like a real jury until everyone agreed on everything.
Yep.
Some people made concessions. Some people really wanted one person to advance, but they were alone, so they kind of had to go with the majority. I guess I'm rambling now. I'll let someone else keep going.
I've been on 2 juries, so it's kind of different experience both times. A lot of it just is based on the individual jury makeup of a particular season. But in terms of both my jury experiences, all of us who participated have read everything, or at least as much as we can. We don't assign games to particular players, and I would recommend future juries not do that as well, just because you want everybody deciding to have as much of a complete picture of the entire season as possible. So you can kind of really, because at some point you're going to have to compare how a person, a villager who died night 2 in game 1 did against a wolf who got lynched on day 6 in game 9. And completely different scenarios, completely different situations, done sometimes literally months apart, tens of thousands of posts you read in between. So you're going to have to do the full comparison yourself. So we read everything, and I strongly recommend that everybody else on future juries also individually read everything.
All right, so Beck, you are on the jury this year. Actually,
Yep.
Have you served on a jury before? Actually,
I've not. So
Oh.
The furthest I made was wild card in season 3. So this is my first time on the jury this year, and so I mean, I won't go into great length because, like Del said, even talking now with our group, there's no consensus. Yes, this is the number one thing that makes someone advance. Even in our early conversations, as we're talking about theory and we're talking about the differences in things such as something as small as the length of a day phase and how that impacts how players play. We're trying to consider a lot of this here. And so, I can say this at the very least, that, the players that play and are themselves and that can show that through their posts are the players that we're probably going to be paying the most attention to. Doesn't matter if you get mislynched, day 1 or day 6, or if you die night 1 or you die night 6. For us, it's more the contributions you make while alive. And us, we're going to do our best to process this. So it's going to be a lot of information that we're going to be sifting through. Again, we're just working through games 1 and 2 right now. We're doing it live. We've got like an awesome crew, though. The people that I played with in the finale last year are all amazing players on their own, but they've all got a really phenomenal grasp on how Werewolf is played, how, we think the best players do play. And so I think, obviously you can never always get it right. I wasn't even selected to go on last year, and I still found a way. So, it's not a perfect process, but, you definitely can be confident that the group that we've got here, like past juries too, is going to consider everything. And it's going to make the most educated decision with the information that we have. So on that note, show everything you got in your qualifier, and do your best and be yourself, and we'll find you.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, like that's one thing I want to say to expand that is like the jury for this is like almost a full-time job, or at least a part-time job that they're doing. And I hope and ask that people respect the work they're doing, because they did read your post and they did consider you carefully. And you may not know it, and maybe you just missed out on wildcards, but maybe they used a whole day debating between you and another player. And this game is subjective.
Literally accurate at some times.
Yeah, literally accurate at some times. And like we've also had players who didn't advance to a wild card or semifinal, make it to the finals the next season. Like these things just happen, and a lot of it is like we wanted to be about the best player, not MVP. That is something we emphasize. But sometimes you also do need the right circumstances to show yourself the best sides of you. That is a thing. And one more thing I want to touch on, or there's a couple of things. I want to touch on 2 critiques that we've gotten throughout the years. One critique is the jury system. So like in season 1, the championship started with me inviting players because it was just a fun thing I did. So for the first season, I just invited players from the few sites that I knew, and the players that I knew had good reputations. So that's how the whole thing started. And those then, the finals then served on the jury for the next season. And from season 2 onwards, each season or each community could only send 1 representative. So we had a very wide selection of representatives and very many different styles represented. But there's still some carryover from the first season on the jury. And that is a critique that the carryover has been there ever since. So like the season 2 jury, they selected like the styles that suited them or were most familiar to them, and it's been that way ever since. It's one of the critiques we've gotten. Like there's still a carryover from way back then. Like they keep selecting what they're used to, right? What they're familiar with. One counter argument to that, one obvious counter argument is that not all finalists are chosen by the jury. A lot of them are advanced by the players in the qualifiers, and those aren't biased. So I hope that's a thing that people consider. But another critique we've gotten, and this goes back to something I touched on earlier, and I could sort of see this, is that people prioritize town games more than Mafia games. And so the voting system and how people vote, and like if you're town, you want to either you vote for this, like this is what some people think, either if a Mafia survived the game, you vote for them because, hey, they won the game, they survived. It's easy that, hey, they deserve a vote, right? I'll throw them a vote. Maybe not first place vote, but they at least get a second place vote. And if everyone gives them a second place vote, then they probably win the vote because the other votes are spread out, right? So that's the thing that happens. But often they want to like give credit to a fellow townie because they were in the same situation and they can appreciate more, and they were playing from that perspective. So that's the perspective
they were in the trenches together, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the perspective that they're valuing. And in general, people play town more. So again, jury members may also be prioritizing town play higher than Mafia play. Now, there's 2 sides to this. One is that actually Mafia have...
First of all, that's hearsay. That's,
statistically
I wouldn't
untrue.
agree with that.
Statistically, Mafia advance way more than they should.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the thing. But we still have gotten that critique that people, and here's where I think the critique makes sense, and it's what I want you to comment on, DWetzel, and you other guys can touch on it if you want, is that for Mafia, often, and some of you have touched on this, actually, Beck, you mentioned this earlier, that you want to make something that isn't a big deal. And like, if you're a jury watching that, you're thinking, what the fuck is up with Beck? He's not playing well. Like, he's not having good thought process. Like, why is he harping on this and whatever? But you're a Mafia. That's what you want to do sometimes. You don't want to be the smart, intelligent player. You want to, like, or you don't want to pick up those who are lagging behind. You don't want to do all these pro-town things. Sometimes you do them anyway, and I think that's a big leak, actually, in many people's games. That's, like, my overall statement is that you never get town credit for doing pro-town things. I don't think, not in a skillful player list, so why even do them at all? That's one of my advice. Why even do them if you're not getting town credit for them? Let the town destruct. So what are your thoughts on that, DWetzel? Like, do you think Mafia's thought process and what they're posting are likely to get the attention or the credit?
Well, I think, as you said, it's a lot easier for people to identify with town in general. They've been in that position more. They know what their right way to play is, and everybody's got different processes about it, but it's all basically with the same goal. Whereas the Wolf goal is get villagers lynched somehow. And there's so many different ways to go about that.
Yeah.
Anything from, distracting them to standing on your soapbox and absolutely driving one crucial lynch that gets you to a point where, now you're down to lynch or lose, and okay, maybe you get lynched the next day, but your wolf partner's in a great spot, and they're the one that survived, but you did all the legwork for that, and that sometimes gets underappreciated. And it feels icky to vote too many members of a wolf team in if they win the game, or even if they don't win the game, just because, well, okay, they didn't all survive. The point of the game is not to survive as a wolf, and I've been guilty of this actually early on. I had a really high survival rate, I think, but when I didn't, it was pretty much over.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to identify with the town, and then I'm kind of losing my train of thought here.
No, let me pick up on it, because I think you're completely right. Let me bring up an example from myself, and this is sort of tooting my own horn. But like, I once led a Mafia team to the only sweep victory in a 21 cup game there's ever been. So all 5 Mafia survived, and like I even literally wrote posts for one of my Mafia mates, and I nailed the cops on nights 1 and 2 through, and I was 100% sure they were the cops based on everything that was said and left as cover and such. So we won with every one of us alive, but when the game ended, like everyone was like, yeah, we knew Thingy Man was Mafia, right? So I didn't get credit. It was it was the towny Mafia. Like there was one of my favorite Mafia.
It's always the deep wolf, not the wolf that like drives the action.
Yeah. I got 0 credit. Like everyone's like, we knew. We just, how didn't we get him? Blah blah blah. But like they didn't get me. Like, and it's the results and it's the work that matters. And that is something that can be overlooked.
No, it is, and sometimes as the wolf, the right thing to do is just get the hell out of the way.
Yep.
I mean, and knowing when to do that is really important. And just kind of, lets you and them fight, and we'll see what happens. And picking the right side of that is a subtle ability that nobody ever notices. But
all right, guys, we've been on for a long time. I have one final question, because I promised that I would bring people's questions to you, and 2 people asked the same thing. I'll read up both of the questions, but it's sort of the same question, and I'll post it to you first, Dels. Fate Accompli asks, what is the upside of going super strong town mode, given you will get capped early? I guess a better way to ask this is it better if you're town to lay low and try to finish strong? And if so, how do you do that if you're the sort of player that is a hard charger as town? Poison asks basically the same question. How should we avoid getting killed at night without laying low?
Great. Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, this is basically tying into exactly what I was talking about earlier, which is respecting everyone else's opinions as much as your own. Now, easier said than done in some towns, but to me, I think, the point of view that I need to survive longer because I'm the one who can solve the game if I'm alive on day 5, so I need to purposefully lay low. That's basically saying I don't trust the other people to be able to do it. But why do you have more of a right to be there on day 5 and solve the game than someone else? And also, we talked a lot about the importance of being yourself and just being authentic. So if you are purposefully choosing to lay low and not say what you're thinking, that's going to be very easily confused with being a Mafia member who is also purposefully trying to lay low and not say what they're really thinking, which is the thing.
Don't be like the guy who lynched Sue. Don't compare yourself to that.
Yeah. I just don't see the point in trying to lay low to survive longer. I think you just have to trust the other players in your game to do well if they live longer than you. You also have to trust them to be able to correctly determine if you were a good player or not in post-game voting. Same with the jury. You just have to trust it. And players who die night 1 and night 2 have very high chances of moving on anyway. People can usually tell that they were skilled. And also, like I was saying, there are doctor possibilities this year, so that's even less incentive for the wolves to kill you if you're strong. So I think the answer to how do I successfully lay low to live longer is please don't.
Yeah.
So I have 2 comments to that, and I'll let you other guys comment as well. One is to play devil's advocate, because there's a difference here between a regular championship game and a regular Mafia game. So I don't know, Dels, if your advice here goes to a championship game versus a Mafia game. But like, let's take 2+2. where we had many cup games. So a lot of the games were centered around the cup, and you wanted to protect the cup. So drawing the night kill was a huge thing. You wanted, as a vanilla, if you were in cup, you wanted to draw the night kill. You wanted to take the bullet for the cup, the important role. That was a huge thing. Soa went against the grain on that. Soa, previous finalist, a 2-time finalist. He made it popular, at least a lot amongst the stronger players. He made it popular to purposely try to survive long into the game because he believed himself to be, and he was, to be frank, better than the other players. So he wanted to be alive for the end game where the decisions mattered much more. Because if you're the best player, and of course, this is selective. We all only remember our good games, but I also believe myself to be a good player. And I just remember those early games where I again posted a solving PoE list on day 1 or 2. I again did it, but I was killed on night 1 or 2, and they never followed the list. So should I adapt? Should I try to survive longer? What are your other guys' thoughts on that? So Dels is saying, don't do it. Be yourself, because otherwise you can be Mafia. But is true skill being a good player and being able to survive a bit longer?
No.
No. All right, GH.
The absolute most beneficial thing you can do for your alignment, if you ran town, is to be as villagery as possible, as early as possible. Make yourself unlynchable under any circumstances, no matter what, just through good posting. If you have an entire game where villagers do that, then Mafia have no chance of winning whatsoever. Take yourself out of the lynch pool. Take yourself out of the PoE. That's one more person the Mafia have to deal with personally, and one less person that the town can inadvertently aid the Mafia in by mislynching. You do that, that's 1. If you and I do that, that's 2. And if enough people do that, it doesn't matter how good the Mafia is, the game's over.
Yeah, they're going to get pigeonholed, if I'm using that term.
Yes.
Yeah, they're going to get
They
closed
are
in on.
put into the box, as a Wide Says wrote about on the Mafia University section.
Exactly. Good article. Go read it. And
I'll say 2 things. Oh, go ahead, please, sir.
No, go ahead, Beck.
I was going to say on GH note, totally the right advice there, because as a Wolf who had just played 2 games against really tough competition, we were fortunate to come out on top, but that game was painstaking when several villagers were just so good at being villagers. It made my job so much more difficult. And then that's when you start to see the cracks in the Wolves, and they're easier to catch. So he's totally got the right advice there, from a villager's perspective. The second thing I'd mention here too, and this might peel back the layer in terms of how we're looking at this preliminarily as the jury, is we're really trying to grade you from point A to point B, right? If that's 1 day that you're alive, if that's 6 days you're alive again, what you do with that time and the effort that you put forward is what we're looking for. If you do middle of the line, right, and you die day 2 anyway, you've only shot yourself in the foot. So it's really taking, everything that you've got and showing it with the time that you have, and we're going to notice that. So if that's ever a fear, particularly those that ask the question, don't let it be. Play your hearts out.
So the message from a jury member this year, and as a former jury member myself, I'll repeat it. Try your hardest. It's only going to play well to the jury. So many of us here think you should do that at any game, but you should especially do it in a championship game. You should not do the opposite in a championship game. You should really go all out. And also, going back to something we talked about earlier, if you go all out, and part of building success is building a core, a foundation. So if you're not there to help the foundation on day 1 because you're doing your own thing and trying to survive, well, you're not going to have a foundation to fit into later on. You're not going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve later in the game anyway. DWetzel. What does the D in DWetzel stand for? Bopolis asks.
It's just my first name. I'm David. That's my first name. So there you go. Not the most exciting, but there it is.
All right. So
yeah.
David, do you have anything to add to what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do advance is play to win the game, however you play it. I always had a phrase when I was playing. There were 2 types of people. There are the ones that would, storm the cockpit of the hijacked plane, and there were people down afterwards who would analyze the wreckage when they got it down. And I was always more the second sort. But the first kind, you do draw earlier kills, but you also, like they said, lay the foundation for people to win the game. And if that's your style, do that. It's a lot easier to get noticed for things you did day 1 or day 2 if people look at your stuff day 3, day 4, day 5 and say, hey, you know what? Maybe they were right. Maybe that's the reason they got killed, and take it from there. And if you get killed early as a villager, if you get night killed, it's because the wolves feared you.
Yep.
And I think every single jury member is going to think about that and try to decipher why. And if you did that in such a way where you communicated that to the village and that takes them along, that's the right way to play for you.
Yeah,
and I think it's going to probably get rewarded.
Like, honestly, I think night 1 kills have at least an 80+% stat of advancing.
Night 2.
Night 2.
Night 2?
Night 2. Yeti has an ongoing Google Doc analyzing it.
Do you know the stat for night 1?
Not as high as night 2, not off the top of my head.
Okay. But it's still pretty high. Like,
yeah.
If you're like, I don't think any of us, night 1 and night 2 players advance a lot. All right, guys, we're nearing the end here. I want to end on a fun note. So first, I'm gonna ask you a quiz question.
Ooh.
Who holds the all-time record of qualifier points? Does anyone know?
Oh, yeah.
You do?
In a single qualifier, right?
Yeah.
Beck's wolf partner in the season 6 finale, Lady Lambda Delta.
That is correct. Do you remember how many points?
70.
70 points. That is correct.
Yeah, because she broke my record. So yeah, I remember it.
That is the all-time record. Of course, all seasons aren't comparable to each other because the voting system changed and the number of people in each game also changed and all that. All right, very well done, GH. You get a cookie for that. A virtual cookie, or virtual high five. A Corona high five.
Woo!
All right, so I'm gonna show the teaser one last time, and when I return, I want all of you, as the very final thing we do, to name your guess at who will win this season. And I guess Beck, you're a jury member, but come on, let's just all trust that Beck isn't biased.
I don't know.
Like, he hasn't. Like, there's only been 2 games, so. Let's make this rule. You can't name anyone from games 1 or 2. So even if you do think it's someone from games 1 or 2, you can't say that. So you're talking about someone who hasn't even played yet, and he's on a jury. He's on a jury with a lot of other people. So if they think the person should have advanced, all right, come on, guys, you trust us. He's not going to be biased. So when I return, these guys will each have their guess for who's going to win this season. We will be right back. Can you guys tell that I like that teaser a lot? Actually, and you might have noticed that teaser is actually from season 5. I didn't get it updated, so you'll see a lot of community names on there that aren't playing this season, but we'll do it to celebrate them having been part of this. Whatever. All right, and the theme song, by the way, if you like it, is from The Genius. I can only recommend go watching it. It's like, I think it's the best show ever, and I'm not exaggerating. I think it's the best show ever. So if you're in a strategy or survivor or whatever, you should go watch it. All right, let's talk. Let's turn it over to you, GH, first. Who's your pick?
Well, the money's probably on the MU rep Smart Bomb, but I like to be the only. I like the fact that I'm the only MU rep to have 1 champ, so I'm not going to say Smart Bomb. I'm going to go with one of the folks from the season 5 finale. I'm going to say, hey, Mom. Yeah, I think she's smart. I think she's motivated. I think she's going to bring it home this year, and I still feel bad about how the finale ended for her, so that's part of it as well.
Hey, Monkey.
Yeah.
From Reset Era. All right.
Mhm.
Yeah, good guess. Dels, who you got?
I like Hey Monkey too, but I'm gonna go with Psycho Soldier as my pick.
Mm.
I think Psycho Soldier is a phenomenal town player who just unfortunately caught a little bit of a bad break last time he was in finals, but I think there's a lot of potential to, as we said, learn from it and do even better this year.
So we have 2 former finalists picked so far. Beck, who do you believe in?
Well, I'm not going to buck that trend. I think that there's a lot of really talented players here, which is what I'm most excited about. If you're going to make me pick here, one, just because I've seen them play before and I know they're really talented. Sorry to put the pressure on. I'm really excited to see Silver Keith play.
Keith.
Yeah, so I think he's going to do well. I've seen him, really talented wolf, really talented villager, so I might put my money there.
All right. DWetzel, who you got? I'm just looking through the list
I
myself.
have absolutely no idea who any of these people are. Let's see. I have absolutely no idea who any of these people are.
Just pick Cruz. He's the 2+2 rep.
Sure, Cruz. I tell you what, I've played with Cruz a number of times. He's
always a villager.
He's an eccentric fellow. But I honestly do, if he takes it seriously, which is always in question, he's better than he lets on sometimes, and he's got some potential to do some things in this. So sure, we'll shout out to the 2+2 guys. We'll give it to you, Cruz. Go for it. Good luck.
Right. You believe in Cruz. Awesome. So a fun fact about 2+2, Soa advanced to the finale in season 2, but I believe that 2+2 hasn't advanced to the finale since. Beck, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure about last season. Was there a 2+2 in the finale?
It was Batman. He made wild cards, but that's where he stopped.
Yeah. All right. So they've advanced to the wild cards a lot of times, but not the finale since Soa in season 2. So I would say that they're underperforming a bit. So let's see how they do this season. I have 3 names. I want to bring up because it's hard to mention just one.
You're super high on Holy Flare, if I recall.
I am super high on Holy Flare from Team Liquid. I've been trying to get him to play for many years. So Holy Flare indeed is one of my names from Team Liquid. Shouldn't Team Liquid have a Mafia team? That would be awesome, right? And then another player I want to mention is $2 million from Board Game Geek. Again, like he has a lot of playing and hosting experience, and like the hosting experience is not something.
It's very underrated.
It's very underrated. Like I think hosting one game gives you at least the experience of playing 3 games. It's important to also play because you need that part as well. But like being able to look at a game from that perspective, right, and just being able to watch the dynamics and interactions and how it all works, I think that's huge. I think that's a huge advantage. So those 2, and let me find the last player. Who was it? I saw him on here.
Why did you get to name 3?
I
mean, I like the 3 that we all named, so.
Yeah.
And also Cruz, too, I guess.
Cruz.
Yeah.
I don't know Cruz, but I mean, yeah.
It's because I'm special, Dels. Last player.
Oh, I don't know if you want to save it for next week. I don't know if we commented on spec chat.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah,
might be good just because we're gonna have more players dying across next week. Just a little bit there too.
Let's touch on it briefly, but save it as a bigger topic for indeed next week.
Sure.
The last player I want to mention, of course, is you got to go with the stats. I'm a stats guy, and as we touched on earlier, Flash Revolution, round bucks. Yeah. People have also been trying to get him to play for years. I believe they're gonna have a strong showing again this year, and so those are my 3 picks. Yeah, Flash Revolution, Board Game Geek, and Team Liquid. Also veterans in the series, veterans. Yeah, spec chat. So what are you saying, Beck?
I think I would leave this one at GH2. It kind of just general kind of thoughts. I think just setting the stage for when these players re-enter spec chat is the biggest thing. So if you guys want to give a liner there, it's keeping this all in context too is really important.
Yeah. So actually, I think I want to bring this over to Dels because I think it was Dels who brought this up, and I agreed with the thoughts completely. Yeah. And I'm not going to steal your words. So if I'm not mistaken, Dels, right? You had some thoughts on this issue.
Yeah, sure.
So let me contextualize it. Can you contextualize it first? Because again, these are people that may not even know spec chat or where is that.
Oh, okay,
and,
sure.
yeah.
So Spec Chat it's the Discord channel for people spectating the championships. So this means people from your community who have come to watch you, people from the Mafia universe community, and more importantly, people who die in their game, they then get to join the spectator chat as well. And so that's the thing that people can find to be a little bit of a shocking experience, because you die and you didn't realize there's like 50, 60 people in there who were talking about you and commenting on every move you made. And some of those comments about moves you made are going to be things like, I didn't like that move they made. I thought that was a bad move. And sometimes they'll be worded a little bit more forcefully than that, because it's similar to like when you're watching a horror movie and you're like, why are they going off all alone with the killer? People are acting like that in spec chat. They are going to be screaming at their screen, mashing on their keyboard. How did they vote that person out? What are they doing? They have no clue how to play. And so as a player, you go in there and then you see that, and it can feel bad. And not just that, not just the people who are raging. Sometimes there's people who they kind of act not necessarily high and mighty, but they'll basically be like, well, this person was obviously a wolf. If I was in the game, I would have been able to catch them.
We call those people DVC warriors.
Yeah. And so there's basically two things to remember. I'll cover one of them, and then I'll just pass it over to GH. So the most important thing to remember is, and this is what Karen is saying in chat, that's the fun part. Personally, I don't think it would be fun to spectate a game if when Town is doing the mislynch that loses them the game, you're typing in spec chat, this doesn't seem like a good lynch, but I do understand that Mafia is a difficult game, so I might not make the correct lynch either. So it's still well played to everyone. You don't want, that's not fun. You want to be like, what are they doing? And so I just think it's important that everyone knows there's like a mutual understanding, hopefully, amongst everyone in the games and in spectator chat, that we all know the game is hard. We all know that we would be making the same mistakes as you if we were in there. It's more fun to spectate any game if you allow yourself to really, really get into it. And also spec chat. GH?
Spec chat is a 70-person Mason chat, all of whom have read maybe about 5% of the game individually, and they are operating with 95% confidence in their reads. So it's basically just that, and occasionally you'll get a name like just a real psycho person that actually reads most, if not all, of the game, that comes in and drops their reads, and then everybody comes in and sheeps that person anyway. Nobody in spec chat knows what they're talking about. The official motto of spec chat is spec chat has been wrong before and we will be wrong again. And we say that with love.
Exactly. I mean,
generally.
This is the Mafia Championship. It's a spectator sport. That's what we're turning it into. That's part of it. And like when you're watching an NFL match on the telly, and someone does a horrible pass or drops the ball, you yell at the person and scream, "Why the hell is he on the team? Why did it? What?" And etc. Right? But I mean, if you saw that person in real life, you wouldn't say it. Most of us wouldn't. And it's the same thing here. Like you're playing in a championship. You're playing in a world championship. And with that honor also follows this. And that is not to say that I don't understand how people can sometimes be hurt or like have trouble understanding why people are saying these things, especially if they're not prepared.
And if people cross a personal line and take it too far, you can absolutely report that to any moderator at any time.
Yes.
Right. And it's a culture clash thing, and I think sometimes it's unfortunate because like it's also like I can speak honestly and say that this is something that me and my moderator team tries to focus on, but it's hard. Like someone says one thing critical of someone's play, and that in itself isn't over the line. But like, how do you moderate the fact that there are 50 negative criticisms of someone and no positive things about that person? Right? They're obviously gonna feel bad when they get into spectator chat. But we couldn't moderate any one of those messages because it was just an opinion on their game, which was within the rules. That's a difficult thing to navigate in as us, the organizers and the moderators. And I hope people understand how difficult it can be. But I also want to take this as an opportunity to say to those of you who hang out in spectator chat a lot, I know some of you do, if you want, I think we should keep the fun part. But one of the fun parts is also having people stick around, and people are not likely gonna stick around, play more games, and their community isn't gonna return. We have had communities drop out because their representative had a bad experience, and that bad experience had to do with comments and spec chat. And that's unfortunate because the main thing here we're doing is trying to build bonds between communities. Right. And if we're losing communities because of comments, that's also bad. So it's a difficult line, all in all. But I hope that we also can be welcoming to people. So this is my final thing. If you see someone come into spec chat, whoever they are, if you think they did poorly or well, be very welcoming. Greet them warmly and make them feel welcome in spectator chat. And maybe you build a relationship there. And hey, if you're someone named Ask the Pizza Guy, you maybe even get a wife and a baby out of it. Amazing things can happen, is what I'm saying. All right, guys, I want to thank you a lot for coming on this. I'm very pleasantly surprised that got 4 previous winners. I did reach out to Cool Kid and Whiskey Jack. Maybe they'll be on for a later show. I have a lot of things we didn't even get through our agenda, which is a good thing. I was hoping for that, but I over-prepared to be sure that we had enough stuff to talk about. So there are many subjects to talk about in the following weeks. I want to try to make this a weekly thing. It, of course, depends on whether I can get people for this. I do hope to get some of you back. I can reveal that I don't want to have it be the same group because some of the themes I'm going to touch on would be it would be better suited to have other perspectives for that. Yeah. But I thought for this warm-up, it made very good sense to have winners. Start strong, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So good luck to all those out there trying to be one of these 4 to join their ranks. I do hope to see you on a following podcast, or if not that, I hope to see you in a following reunion game. I will have both a general all former reps game, but I also have a former finalist game. And in 10 years' time, maybe a former finalist winners game. We'll have to wait some time for that. All right, guys. Thanks again to you.
Thank you for organizing both this and All of Champs.
Thanks so much. It was fun.
Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and see you next week.
All right.
Bye-bye.